Okay, we're good.
Yeah, that was definitely promoted by management. That's how they wanted you to feel. And it was real easy to feel that way because they had department picnics where you would go, the food was all free. Sometimes they'd have some type of entertainment and games, and then they had like intramural leagues for softball, touch football, flag football, volleyball. Any time of the year, any season, there was some type of intramural sport to play if that's what you wanted to do.
And that was all done by management?
Yeah, never cost the employee anything. They had a gym. They had, at that time, out on Cyberling Street, across from where it used to be the old Goodyear rim plant, they had 6 or 7 ball fields probably out there. Nice ball fields, groomed nicely, infields nice, outfields nice. They were nice places. So yeah, you could play whatever you wanted to play pretty much, and it was all free, didn't cost you anything. So it was fun, and it promoted, that promoted a cohesiveness too, because most of the time the teams were made up of let's say Plant 1 electric shop, which was a legitimate team, and it was all guys, we worked together every day, So if you lost the next day, they're pointing a finger at you. So it's kind of fun, really. Yeah, it was. Most of that was just mostly the young guys that did that, So it just kind of took the place of, made you feel at home. It made you feel comfortable, So, yeah, they definitely promoted that. I can see that now. I really didn't think of it like that back in those days, but they did. And they had Christmas parties, where you bring your family in and you give your kids presents and Santa Claus, and they have the gym all decorated, They really went way out of their way to do things for their employees at first.
How did that change?
I'll tell you the truth. You asked about this before, and I gave that some thought. Without question, Goodyear changed after the strike in 1976. Without a doubt. It was never the same after that. Before that strike, it was family. It really was. But I can remember coming back from that strike. So I would have been there 6 years, I guess. And I remember, and by that time, of course, I had graduated from the apprenticeship program, and I was a journeyman electrician and way more involved in things. And I can remember the animosity when we come back was awful. People that had been friends before, maybe a supervisor and a guy that worked for him, they were not friends anymore. There was animosity on both sides. The people resented us coming back to work, resented the advancements that we had made by being out on strike for 5.5 months. And then, of course, the hourly guys, those of us who were on strike, resented the fact that we were broke. We had spent all of our money. We didn't have any savings left. Some of the guys were on the verge of losing their houses and their cars, and it was tough. It really was. And of course, they resented the fact that, hey, I just spent 5 months standing out there, and you're going to be upset with me because I'm coming back to work. There was a lot of animosity. There really was. And then, of course, the CEO we had at the time didn't help. He went public and made statements about the hourly people in Akron having a bad work attitude, which was so unfair. It really was. When I look back, and I try to be fair, no, I have no reason not to be fair now, but man, when I look back at that, James, there were guys who I swear would work 6, 7 days a week, sometimes 10 hours, 12 hours a day, and they might miss 1 day of work a year. Maybe. A lot of them never missed at all. But, if you missed 3 or 4 days a year, that was a lot. People didn't lay out. They didn't go hunting when hunting season come. They didn't, take off because they were tired. People came into work. They were tired. They came into work when they were sick. It was like everybody came to work. I don't know how you could ever equate that to a bad attitude.
Yeah.
and they did their job. They did. And from what I saw all those years, after a while, most people really didn't even need any type of supervision. They knew what they were supposed to do. They came in every day and they did it. That's kind of how it went. Terrific attitude, in my opinion. But for some reason, I think the animosity of the strike he was probably speaking more out of anger than he was out of saying what he really felt. That's how I always looked at it. But it did a lot of harm. Getting up in the morning and opening up the Beacon Journal and seeing that, it hurt. It was hurtful. It really was. Thinking, well, you... And in the statement he made, he didn't single out anybody. He just made a general statement about everybody. And I can remember, even old ladies being, cussing him, We had a lot of, by the way, even back then, we had a lot of old, I hate to say old ladies, but that's what they were, that were left over from the war. From World War II, that were, they were probably in their 70s and still working, and they were mean as, I wouldn't have wanted to, even at that age, at 60 or 70 years old, I wouldn't want to mess with them. They were mean. They really were. But there was lots of them. And they had, by that time, of course, they had enough service where they could bid on jobs that were, not physically hard for them to do, maybe stand at a table all day long and do this or whatever, but they were it could be mean, and they were very ornery. Very ornery. The young guys that came in there, they would not leave them alone, and because it was funny, they knew it was funny, to embarrass you. So yeah, they were quite the characters. But that strike was, I know within my mind, there is no single thing that did more harm to the rubber companies in Akron than that strike. That one hurt. Both sides. Yeah. It really did.
So were you a part of the union, or were you?
No, I was union. When you hired into Goodyear in an hourly position, doesn't matter what position it was, maintenance, production, didn't matter. You were required to be in the union. And if you couldn't opt out, you had to be in there. That was just the way it was. So you didn't have any choice. So yeah, I was union from the very first day that I went in there. That whole union thing too, when I look back on it, 50-50, good and bad. Some of it was really good, some of it was bad. Didn't matter. You had to be in it anyway, whether it was good or bad or whatever, So you tried. I think most guys tried to just make the best of it, There were guys, and I'll say this about myself, and maybe other people wouldn't exactly say this, but I pretty much worked a whole career, and I always felt like I could have done without it. I don't think I got any personal benefit from it. I never needed it. But there was a lot of guys that had issues, alcohol, drugs, lots of issues that they probably would have lost their job if they had not been in. They would have if they had not been in the union, because they had all kinds of programs. The union actually ran programs for the hourly employees, alcohol counseling, drug counseling, whatever. That was the union. It wasn't the company that did that. So
was there a lot of that going around?
Oh yes, lots of it. Lots of it went untreated. But yeah, there was. That was another thing that I got an eye opener about as a young kid, was that, geez, now, man, men who worked for a living, blue collar workers, they could drink, man. It was unbelievable. It was like. And then, of course, there would be, here, kid, like, no thanks, I can't do that. But yeah, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of it. Didn't affect them. I know it's hard to believe, but it never fazed them. They could go out to lunch or stay out half the night and drink the evening away and come. You know what? 8 o'clock in the morning, there they were on the bench. Happy as they could be, It never fazed them. It really didn't. They were quite. We had old guys in there that were amazing. I mean, a lot of them had been through the war, you know, and I'll give you an example. I worked with an old guy in particular. Did you ever hear of Darby's Rangers?
I have not.
Darby's Rangers was a unit of fighting men in World War II that were, I guess, probably the equivalent of the Green Berets or the Navy SEALs now or whatever, but they were amazing. There's actually been movies made about them. But he was in that unit, you know. Oh man, that old man was nicest guy you'd ever want to meet in your on earth. But I mean, he was a man's man. He really was. You didn't, when he spoke, you said, yes, sir. You know, that's what you did. But you know, if they liked you, they would eventually maybe share some of the stuff that they had done in their lifetime. Like, he used to jump out of airplanes in the middle of the night dressed in black. So they were stealthy. Like they would parachute out of airplanes in the blackness of the night with black parachutes, all dressed in black, and had no idea what was coming up. Oh yeah, they were quite the characters. So we had one guy, one electrician that served in that unit, and then we had another one that served in another real specific group like that. And I can't remember what they were called, but there was lots of them. I mean, there really were. So I guess what I'm telling you is, once you found out maybe some of these guys' background, you found out why they drank so much, you know, why. There was a reason, you know, and they didn't hurt anybody. They never, I can never remember one of those old guys who drank hard ever hurting anybody or hurting themselves or hurting a piece of equipment. They did their jobs really well. I mean, they really did. And like I said, take it to the bank, 8 o'clock in the morning, he's going to be sitting on that bench. We had one old guy that, I think I told you about him. For lunchtime, he would have two double doubles and 2 beers. That was his lunch. He didn't eat. That was his lunch. And he would go home every night, stop on the way home, buy a 5th of whiskey every evening, and he would drink a whole 5th of whiskey in the evening. 8 o'clock in the morning, there he was. You know, so, oh yeah, I used to come home and like I said, I was young. When I first started there. I didn't live at home long, but when I first started, I was still living at home. I'd come home and tell my dad, I said, "Oh man, you can't believe this." He said, "Yeah, I can." You know? But it was amazing, really was. But those are the type of guys that we worked with. You know, like I said, they'd kick you in the hind end one day and hug you the next day, and God forbid anybody else tried to kick you in the hind end. Wasn't going to happen. You know, he's mine. You leave him alone. You know, just like your dad would do. You know, same type of thing. Yeah. So that was nice. It felt good to have people around you like that. You know, especially when you're doing electrical work, because it was dangerous. You know, it really was. We did a lot of high climbing type stuff and high voltages. You know, we worked on voltages anywhere from little control voltages to 23,000 volt distribution systems. It was dangerous. You know, it really was. I've actually talked to a couple of my buddies here in the last couple of years, and we talked about a couple situations where when we were done, we said, we could have died, man. You know, we could have died, and the truth is, we could have. Lucky, just lucky, you know. But yeah, it was quite the place. It really was. But like a city, I'm telling you, it was like a city. Anything that went on in the real world went on in there. I mean, it was remarkable. Really, it was. We had people with mental illness. We had people who, on the weekends, they had churches and they were ministers and they preached in church on Sunday. So everything in between, the good Christian men who had churches and were the deacons in their church on the weekend, and people who suffered from mental illness and ex-cons. You know, that's another thing. See, back in, I told you I teach at Stark State. Mm-hmm. Well, you know now, if you have a felony conviction, you're not going to get a job. It's not going to happen. And it hurts me because some of the guys that I teach down there, I have found out have had felony convictions, and I like them. They're hard. As a matter of fact, to be honest with you, some of the harder workers that I've had are guys that have come out of prison. Now, they did time not for like murder or anything like that, mostly drug convictions. You know, they were making or selling drugs or whatever, and they've actually talked to me about it, you know. And but back then, you know, you could have felony convictions and you can work in there. We had them. We had lots of them. That rim plant that I was telling you about, that was a real physically hard job. It was, I mean, those guys, they were picking up rims that weighed, I don't know, 50 pounds, maybe more, and moving those things for an 8-hour shift. They were doing that, you know. And they were, man, they had arms like that and necks like that, and mean. You know, just the rim plant was a scary place to work because of all the felons that they had out there. But not anymore. You know, you can't do that. You're not going to get a job. You know, I kind of feel bad for them. I mean, that's, you know, maybe not all of them, but some of them I do. So, yeah, that was a little bit scary at times too. But you know what? You found out real quick. You know, guys would tell you, hey, that guy is a convicted, you know, murderer. And we actually had them. We had people in there that had killed people, you know. So, oh yeah, like I said, anything that goes on in the city, we had in there. And I'm sure Firestone had them, and Goodrich had them, and the same type of thing, you know. But yeah, they were there. You learned real quick, you know, leave that guy alone. You know.
So let me ask you about kind of the relationship between the unions and the management when you started. Now, when you came in, that was, I believe, that Bomarito had already been there for like 2 years. Yeah,
Bomarito was the international union president, Peter Bomarito, and then the local Goodyear union president was a guy named John Nardella. He was our local president. Well, let's see. You mean how the relationship was between the company and the union?
Yeah. I mean, you know.
I guess if I had to use one word, I would say respectful on both sides. I don't think there was hatred. They both acknowledged that, look, you're stuck with me, whether you like it or not, you know, and that's kind of how they operated. They showed each other respect. I think they're a legitimate effort to try to do the right thing, pretty much, not always, but on both sides, you know, but pretty much the right thing on both sides. And Nardella, I think, had a great relationship with upper management. Some of the lower echelon union people were self-serving. They were involved for one reason, and that was to benefit themselves. I mean, I have to say that. I was involved for a while, and I just didn't care for it. I just didn't. I realized that this is like beating my head against the wall. And a lot of it was not because of management. It was because of your hands were also tied because of union regulations. You know, so it was difficult. I had a real hard time learning and understand how it operated. When I first went in there, you know, they had jurisdictional issues. I don't know if you know that or not. We had 200 electricians, okay? An electrician was not an electrician, was an electrician. If you were a maintenance electrician, you couldn't do building maintenance. If you are a production electrician, if you were a building maintenance electrician, you couldn't do production work. There were areas that you were permitted to work in, and if you stepped outside of that area, they filed grievances. Like one department, like my department, might file a grievance on your department because your boss sent you into my jurisdictional area, and they paid them. It's like, so they paid twice, you know. So it would be like, if your boss had sent you into my area to do a little electrical job, and I walked by and saw you, I said, James, what do this is our jurisdiction here. What are you doing here? You'd say, well, my boss told me to come do this. Well, I'd go back to the office, get a hold of my union rep, and say, hey, James is down there rewiring this machine or whatever. He'd write up a grievance, turn it into the company, and the next thing you know, I'd get paid. I'd get extra money in my paycheck, So see, that a lot of guys were motivated by that. They were looking for grievances because they had the low-houred guys. They would keep track of hours. Every department had hours charts, and you could look at them every day and see where you stood on the hours, because they had a contractual obligation to balance them. In other words, they couldn't give you 100 hours a month and give me 50. They were contractually obligated to keep those hours balanced. But yeah, guys would look for grievances because they want to get some extra money, which was wrong. That was wrong. And I always felt like the union should have stepped up and say, hey, legit is one thing, but creating these situations is another. You shouldn't be doing that. And I can remember when I was involved telling guys that, hey, come on, man, I know what you're doing here. And of course, they just go over my head and get their way anyway. So that's why I got frustrated. I quit. I thought, I'm not doing this no more. I'll just do my thing and let them do theirs. So that's kind of what I did. But yeah, but in the beginning, it was, and again, the union took you in as a brother. That's what they called you, brother. That was, that's what they called you. It was the International Brotherhood of Rubber Workers. Everything was a brotherhood, a brother, and that's how it was. So yeah, you kind of were forced into an alignment. But having said that, the Goodyear apprenticeship program was a huge feeder system for management. And they told you that when you interviewed before you ever started. They used that apprenticeship program as a feeder system for management all over the world. Here's the thing. I'm not bragging about this, but this is just the facts. When I went in that apprenticeship program, there were 1,700 guys that took the apprenticeship test. 1,700 that took that apprenticeship test on over 3 weekends, I think it was. When they hired, they took 17 of us. Jeez. So it wasn't easy to get into, and they part of the testing process was we had a math test that took 4 hours to complete, and if you didn't complete the math test, they sent you home. So you had to pass a 4-hour math test in order just to be able to stay for the rest of it. So I guess I'm telling you, the fact that I was college-oriented and I was taking calculus and trig and all that stuff, that's probably was what got me in there. I didn't know it when I was doing it. I hated it, to tell you the truth, but I'm glad I did it, So they used it as a feeder system, and the whole interview process was pretty cool. They would interview you in front of panels of people, and not only were they concerned about your grade point average and stuff like that, they were concerned about your extracurriculars. Did you play ball? Did you do this? Were you on National Honor Society? Were you on the student council? And then, of course, they had references from your school or from your counselors or whatever, and what kind of citizen person you were. Yeah, all of that, just to hire into an hourly job at Goodyear. So I guess what I'm telling you is that's where and I hated it when they used to say this. I used to hate this. But they would get us together in groups. Every now and then they would have these big group apprentice meetings, and the first thing they would tell you was, you're the cream of the crop. Oh, I hated that. I don't want to be anybody's cream of their crop, I just wanted to be left alone, But that's what they would tell you, that you're the cream of the crop. And then, once you spent your 4 years and once you graduated, they would come after you, and now they recruited you for management positions. They'd say, hey, we have a maintenance supervisor job open in Jackson, Michigan, or in Union City, Tennessee, or over in England, or whatever. Would you be interested? And of course, if you said yes, they would shuffle you off to Union City, Tennessee, and then maybe 10 years later you would be promoted to foreman, and then maybe 10 years later you'd go right up the line. That's why in Akron, see, we had this great network in every division of people who had actually done work in that division. Like all the upper management, the vice presidents, the upper management people, they came right out of maintenance. I mean, at one time they were ground level maintenance people, you know. They just progressed over 20, 30 years or whatever. And they were the suits, you know, so that changed too.
Yeah, how did that change?
Well, later on, when the economy got tough and when they started laying off and stuff, they started trimming down their management as well as their hourly people. So they, at one time, I can't even remember the number, but they had a boatload of vice presidents and directors. And I mean, the upper management was top heavy, man. I mean, so they started trimming them down. Well, the next thing you know, I spent my whole life working in an electrical department for electrically educated and oriented people from the ground clear up to maybe, you know, director or whatever. They were gone. Now I'm working for an accountant. When I left, I was working for a chemical engineer. Nicest lady on earth. I love her to this day. I still call her. I still talk to her. She's was the nicest person, and as a matter of fact, she gave me a glowing reference to Stark State to get me my teaching job down there. They raved about her letter of reference that she sent. So I mean, I really liked her. She knew, that poor lady didn't know how to change a light bulb. I mean, she knew nothing about electricity. But what I loved about her was that she was honest. She would tell you that. Mike, I don't know anything. You know, you're the person here. You're the go-to guy. You tell me. She said, I control the money. She said, if you tell me that you need something, I respect you and I respect your ability, and I'm going to believe you. And so that's how we worked for 16 years. We worked like that, and it worked out great. But over her, there was chemical type engineers, chemists, some of them PhDs, whatever, that great guys, smartest guys you'd ever want to meet in your life. Nice family men, women, not too many women, but they knew nothing about electrical or pneumatics or hydraulics, or they didn't know anything about that stuff. And the guys that did, that were the previous management people, they were gone. They were gone. So what was left? See, I never took one of those opportunities to go. I didn't want it. You know, I had family here. I had roots here. By the time I started getting some opportunities, I had kids, and my wife's family was here, and I had the opportunity a few times, and I just didn't know. I said, I'm not interested. I'm happy doing this. I'm making good money. I have a nice place to live. I have a nice life, and I'm not going to disrupt it. I'm staying right here. So I didn't take it. But then the way it ended up, after all them years, there I am. I'm the only one that knows anything about electricity anyway. You know, so I didn't get paid for that knowledge, though. You know, in some respects I did, but not directly. But so yeah, they they ended up with. I always tell this story to my students down there at Stark State, that when I was telling them, this sounds stupid, but when I was your age, I had this wonderful support system. I had no fear, because if there was something I didn't know how to do or something I didn't understand, there was a dozen guys over me that did, and they were more than willing to help me understand. Okay, so I had no fear. These guys, when they go into the field, they don't have that network of support. So that's what I tell them. You need to be on your game before you ever graduate, because the day that you walk out of here, if you're lucky enough to get a job, someone is going to expect you to be a person of knowledge. See, I didn't have that fear because I had my good old boys. You know what I'm saying? They were there. You know, I didn't worry. If I didn't know something, I went to this guy or went to that guy or went to this guy. I said, hey, you know what? Help me out with this, you know? And they were happy to do that. You don't have that. So I feel bad for them. But yeah, so they took people out of positions of responsibility and put other people in there. Great guys, don't get me wrong, they were great guys, but they shouldn't have been in that position. You shouldn't have had an accountant running a division full of engineers, and you know, that shouldn't happen. An engineer should have been running the division full of engineers, not an accountant, not a production, not an MBA in business, you know, whatever. I mean, like, and that's no offense to them. They were really smart people, way smarter than me. But the good ones knew their limitations and would make it a point to build a relationship with you. The bad ones were arrogant and didn't care whether they had a relationship with you or not. You're going to do what I say you're going to do, whether I don't care what you know, because I'm the boss. So they didn't get along well. So that really changed. You know, that really changed. And along with that, it seems like, you know, sometimes it seems like that as you get older. I always thought as I got older, number one, I would work less hours. Number two, I would work more with my head and less with my body. And number three, the fear would go away. You know, that doesn't really happen anymore, because they're always providing you with something to fear. You know, be it whatever it may be. You know, there's no comfort zone. It doesn't exist anymore. You know, you do the best you can, and that's it. But strange place, you know, it really is. Wasn't like that. It was totally different. It was family. That's what it was. You know, it was family. I used to go to the mall and see people that I knew from work, and it still to this day drives my wife crazy. We will go somewhere. We'll go to a movie. We'll go to a sporting event. We'll go to the mall. I've had it happen on vacation in South Carolina. I'll walk right into a person that I used to work with, and we'll spend 15 minutes, you know, patting each other on the back and reminiscing, and she'll just shake. I can't believe it. How can you know someone in South Carolina? So yeah, there was 25,000 people working there when I started there. I knew a lot of people, you know, a lot of them. Sometimes you only recognize the face, but it's good enough. You know, you knew them, you know, or whatever, but it still happens. It makes her nuts. We can't go anywhere. But yeah, it was a family. It was like every other family. You know, if you have a large family, I'm sure everyone that has a large family probably has brothers or sisters. Some they like better than others. You know, mom liked me best or whatever. That happens, right? Not everybody gets along. That's the same way there. You didn't get along with everybody, but I'd say the biggest part of people you did. So I still see them. I go to their funerals. I go to their wives' funerals, and that's where I'm at now. You know, they're starting to go, and that's what we do. I look in the paper and said, oh my gosh, you know, another one bites the dust. So we'll put a shirt and pants on and go to the funeral home. That's where we're at.
So you think the 76 strike kind of changed?
I know it did.
Changed all that?
There's no doubt. Yes. Yeah, it changed that completely. And then, of course, along came Goldsmith. And then what little bit of integrity I think was left, what little bit of family was left, totally disappeared with him. You know, they started selling off stuff. And did you know, I don't know if you know this or not, do you know when they sold off divisions, they sold not just the business, they sold the people too. Did you know that? Oh yeah. Yeah. They would sell. Now by doing that, of course, they couldn't actually sell to people, but they would, somebody would come in there and they would say, okay, we want to buy your food wrap division. And this really happened. They wanted all of the equipment and they wanted the employees. In other words, they didn't want to train employees. They wanted people who already knew how to run that process. So Goodyear was telling them, here's the deal. We sold this division. You can go with them or you're out of a job. You're done. Take your pick. Well, what choice is there? So they'd pack up and move away with the company or whatever. And I'd say the biggest part of the time, they'd last 2 or 3 years, and then they this isn't like Goodyear anymore. So they would leave, But yeah, they sold it all. I can remember them selling parts of the business. They would have me go into the lab areas and take the receptacles out of the wall. I said, why are we doing this? They said, because they want them. They want everything associated with this business. They wanted transformers. They wanted lighting. They wanted, and I did it one time, and the second time it happened, I went up to our manager and I said, hey, look, I got an idea here. I said, it's crazy for me to go in there and strip these areas of all this equipment and then have to go back in there and put new equipment in after it's gone. I said, why don't we just buy them new equipment and send it along with the machines? If there's 10 receptacles, we'll give them 10 new receptacles. If there's 20 lights, we'll give them 20 new lights. We'll give them transformers to match what they had. And he went, oh, I never thought of that. I said, yeah, look at the labor you're going to save. So that's what we started doing. We just buy them new and send it along with. But yeah, they wanted the people and all. Yeah, so that, of course, you can imagine what that did to people's morale. To be told that, here's your choice. Move to Tennessee or you're done. Move to Kansas or you're done. It was devastating to them. It really was. So, hurtful. But that was our life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that strike affected everything. It really did. It attitudes, and then, just like I told you that, was it Piliad that said that we were bad attitude workers?
CEO.
Yeah, he was the CEO, I think, after the strike. I think he's the one that made the quote in the paper that Akron had bad attitude workers or whatever. Well, then after the Goldsmith thing, we really did have bad attitude workers. Okay, here, watch what you wish for because now you have it, and we did. Everybody had a really bad attitude. We didn't know what was going to be sold off next. Had no idea. Little by little, they pretty much got it all. So, I don't know. And then, of course, we had the other thing going on, not just Goldsmith, but we had them pulling equipment and jobs out of Akron and sending it to the South too, to the Sun Belt, because their labor charges were cheaper, and they were getting tax breaks from the Alabama and Tennessee and the Sun Belt states. So they were taking our work, jobs that people had, like I told you, they missed 1 or 2 days a year. They would come in when they were sick, when they were tired, when they had family problems. They were still there. They took those jobs and sent them down south. And not too many guys got offered the opportunity to go, not hourly people, to go with those jobs. Very few. And the ones that did were, when they got down there, they were Yankees, and they had a real rough time down there. They really did. Most of them quit and come back up here. But,
were there union jobs down there?
Yeah. The few union guys that did get the opportunity to follow the job, after a while, I think they negotiated that in a contract. I don't remember which contract, but they negotiated the right to, the right of first refusal, that they had to at least ask you if you were interested in following the work, or whatever. Most guys did not want that. By that time, Goodyear hadn't hired for a long time, and everybody had a lot of service, and they didn't want to go down there. But the ones that did regretted it, most of them. They were not treated very well. And see, that was treating union brothers like that. Those guys down there were unionized too, So we had Southern Union brothers treating Northern Union brothers terrible. Guys were coming back with stories about how poorly they were treated down there, and so that caused some trouble. It was a lot of politics.
Oh, yeah. How do you think all the change from the companies affected Akron as a city? The morale.
Oh, huge. I think hugely. When I was young and I first started actually getting exposed to the city and stuff, I mean, it was you could go downtown. There was a vibe down there that people were busy. Everybody had somewhere to go, and carrying packages and spending money and going to entertainment venues and things like that, And then after a while, you go down there and it was, you were lucky to get someone asking you for a pocket change. There was nobody there. It was gone. All the department stores were closed. You didn't take your kids down there to see Santa Claus no more because they were gone. They were gone. So, yeah, I think it changed dramatically. Now, to be honest with you, I've lived down here. I lived in Wayne County for 25 years, and I've lived down here for 12. When I go to Akron, I'm appalled. I really am by the state of the neighborhoods. Now, some of that is because a long period of time has passed, but other parts of it is because people don't have any money. They don't have any money to maintain their property, and they're just not there. So the city looks entirely different to me now. When I the rare occasion that I do go up there, it's like I'm like, oh my gosh, it's kind of depressing. I've told my wife sometimes when I go up there, I wish I hadn't. I just rather remember it like it used to be. I'll give you an example. Goodyear Heights. Goodyear Heights was a neat little neighborhood. Little nice older style homes, and they were all unique and all individual, and the yards were all nicely taken care of. And kids out playing in the yard, and the dog, and right out of Ozzie and Harriet. That's how it was up there. I don't like that anymore. It's a war zone now. So and you look at Firestone Park, same way. Gang problems, and it's not the family oriented neighborhood that they were when I knew those places. And I know lots of guys that grew up in Goodyear Heights and Firestone Park, and the great guys come from great families, and they won't even go back there. So not easy. And then of course at Goodyear we had right down the road we had Joy Park, which I don't know if you know anything about Joy Park or not. Drug capital of Akron. Terrible, man. I mean, terrible. Scared to drive down Kelly Avenue and go by there. That's how much crime there is. When I left there, what year did I leave? 2006, I guess. 7, whatever. There was crime right on the street out there in front of Goodyear. Happened all the time. I saw police confrontations with people. They would actually have to physically fight them out on the streets. People pulling guns at bars up there, prostitution. I can remember taking the Goodyear truck, had Goodyear all over it, and like going out to a supply house, stopping at a red light there at Arlington Street, and having hookers come off the corners of the street. I'd say, are you kidding me? I'm working. Like I would do it anyway. But how you approach a truck from a commercial company? They did, and I mean nobody would do anything about it. So different, very different. Cities not like it used to be. I'd like to see it bounce back. I don't know. I kind of doubt it. It's going to tell you the truth. I don't know. Who knows? I never thought it would get like it is now either. See, that was the when you worked at them rubber companies and stuff. That was your rocking chair. You were set. You didn't have to worry about a job or feeding your family or buying a house. Well, you had to worry about, okay, which house? Not can I buy a house, which house am I going to buy? Not can I buy a car, but which car am I going to buy? That's how you looked at things. And no, it's not like that. It's just not like that anymore. So I miss it, actually. I'm not affected by it now, actually. I'm remote from it, but I'm thankful. I am. My little check comes every month. So I hope that continues. after the last strike that I went through up there, I wasn't so sure that it was going to continue.
When was the last strike?
Right before I retired, that was one of the things that pushed me over the edge to leave. Was I saw what happened during that strike, and I said, I got to get out of here. Sometimes the danger comes in staying too long rather than leaving too quick, and I got to that point. So it must have been, I left in 06, maybe, I don't know, 04, 05, somewhere in that area. Mm-hmm. We had a strike up there, and that was not pretty. You know, we had union people that were crossing the picket line and going back to work, and all kinds of animosity, even among the union guys, you know. And things are different now. When I went through the strike, and we tried to tell the young guys this: hey, you have to, no matter how bad it hurts, you have to stay with it. You know, you have to hold the fort, hold the line. You cannot just throw your hands up in the air and give up. You know, but they don't listen. You know, they're not going to listen to you. That made me want to leave, really did. And now the International Union. Now see, the Goodyear people are no longer United Rubber Workers. That union was overtaken by the United Steel Workers. Huge union out of Pittsburgh. No personal attachment to the old rubber workers or anything. You know, it's all business. And unions are now, and this is just my opinion, they're a business of their own. They're in the business of collecting dues. That's what they're in the business of. Okay? They're business people. And that's how they treat it now, you know. So it wasn't a good feeling. It really wasn't. So I made up my mind, if I get the opportunity, I'm out of here. So that's what I did. Opportunity knocked and I answered the door.
So some people have argued that the decline of the rubber industry in Akron is because of the unions and their kind of, I don't want to call it power grab, but they're wanting to keep pushing for more stuff, for more benefits.
Yeah, there was a lot of people that argued that.
Other people have argued that it was management because they wouldn't or couldn't adapt to the change in the market with the new tires coming in from Europe.
Yeah, that was I'm going to say both, actually, both. Mm-hmm. I think management did a poor job of not being, maybe not being willing, but not understanding how to change to the current need of the world, not just United States, you know. And then the union people, I think, because of the economic times that we were going, you had to be realistic, you know. If I could tell you how long it was, I never had a raise in, and I'm not exaggerating this. I hope I don't. I can't even remember really the last time that I had a raise. It was years. And you know, my pay was just the same. We weren't getting raises. We were getting very small cost of living raises. 3 or 4 cents, 5 cents, 6 cents an hour, you know, nothing. Like when I first started there, we'd get a contract, we'd get $1 an hour raise. Or 75 cents an hour, or maybe $1 an hour the first year, and 40 cents the second, and 25 cents the third. Made a huge difference on your take-home pay. The last 10 or 15 years there I was there, I don't think I got any. I know I didn't. No contractual raises. None. Now the way that we did make up and manage to make decent money still was that they kept laying off so many people that the ones that were left worked more. It's like I told you, when I left I was working 60 hours a week. You know, I didn't want to work 60 hours a week, but I kind of had to, you know. And I made good money doing it. I did. You know, but I think for the union people to point the finger at the management people is ridiculous, but I also think for management to point it at the union people was ridiculous. It would have taken both of those parties to use some common sense and to understand where we were at in the world market, you know. And they just weren't willing. Nobody wants to share. You know, nobody wanted to share. It was greed on both parts. I really believe that. And even to this day, I know. And you know what? I used to hear people say that. They would say, "You greedy union people," you know. Well, do you know how that worked? Let's say in 1976, if I got $1 an hour raise, okay, we would stay out on strike for 5.5 months to get $1 an hour raise. Right after we went back to work, they would give it to the non-union people, automatic. Just give it to them, because they didn't want those people to unionize. So in order to keep them from unionizing, after we would make a gain by being on strike or whatever, we'd come back to work and they would give it to them. They'd say, "Okay, well, Mike, yeah, you got your $1 an hour. You stayed out on strike for 5.5 months. James, here's yours. You never missed an hour," you know. So that created some animosity too. See, but yeah, and that's what I couldn't understand, especially the not so much the upper echelon people, but the normal everyday working class non-union people, you know, that worked in the offices and stuff. They should have been grateful for that, you know. Hey, I got a nice raise because the union guys were out on strike. That's cool, you know. But don't criticize us for it, you know. So they got, you know, and your medical benefits and all that. See, that was all directly tied to contracts, union contracts. We wouldn't have had, you know what we got in 76? You know what the big thing, we got $1 an hour raise, but do you know what the big thing we got was? Cost of living. That 5.5 months is why we stayed out on strike, was the cost of living, in order to get a cost of living clause in our contract. And for a few years, the cost of living was really going up. And we would get some nice raises, every maybe 3 months you might get a quarter raise or whatever, and then it leveled off and we didn't get squat. It was pennies after that. But that's how we got it, And really, when we really look back, what we were doing was staying on level, just on level ground. We always compared ourselves to the auto workers. Like if we were making, we always figured it this way. The union people figured it this way: that if a union worker in Akron was making $25 an hour, the auto worker was making 40, and that's about what it was, And that was, we were willing to accept that, but we weren't willing to accept them making 40 and us making 10. You know what I'm saying? That was too big a difference there. So. Yeah, there was a lot of people pointing the finger at the union, and probably still is, actually, but I don't think so. I'll take half blame for it, though. Really, really. I mean, you'd have to be a fool not to admit that there was a lot of things going on that shouldn't have been going on. You really would have had to be. That whole thing is just like the United Steelworkers now. It's a business. And if you want to stay in that business, you have to win the I hate to say love, but the respect of your people. Well, the only way you're going to win the respect of those types of people who work for a living, is with money, and that's the only way. You can have the most silver tongue on earth, but if you're not giving them something, you're not going to win their affection. You're not going to. So, it's a tough situation. Believe me, I'm not anti-union. I think I told you up there were things going on in there that shouldn't have been going on. There was discriminatory things against hourly people, that just like I told you guys about the bathrooms and little things. I can remember one time, Goodyear had a big United Way Red Cross blood drive every year. It was huge. They'd put up these big banners and they would encourage people to go give blood, and they would set up over in Goodyear Hall, and you'd go over there and give blood, and we had guys that had given, 2-3 gallons of blood over their lifetime or whatever, and they would have a gold certificate or whatever, and they were proud of it, they really were. And I can remember one year going over there to give blood. And when I got back, there were people that were not happy that a number of us had gone over there to give blood. So what are you talking about? It's the blood drive, you know. They said, no, you're going to do that. You're going to have to do that on your own time. You're not going to do it on. So wait a minute. There's a whole gym full of people over there giving blood. What are you talking about? We've always done this, you know. I said, not anymore. It's not going to happen anymore. So you ever hear the term dock? They docked our pay.
No.
He said, you were gone an hour. So they took an hour's pay away from us for going over there and giving blood. Well, at that time, I was involved with the union. So I said, well, we'll find out about this. So I go down to the labor relations department, and there's a guy down there in charge of hourly labor relations. And I got an appointment to see him, and I finally got in there to see him, and I explained to him what had happened there. And he listened, and when we were all done, he says, well, what do you want me to do? I said, well, how about number one, notifying those people up there that we can go give blood, and number two, we'd kind of like to have our money back, you know. He said, we're not going to get either one. I said, why? You know, what? You don't think that that's an injustice, you know? And he said, here's the deal. He said, you guys are hourly people. He said, they don't want your blood. What? What do you mean they don't want our blood? He said, you've been exposed to chemicals. He said, all of you have worked in areas where you've had chemical exposure and stuff. He said, they don't want your blood. They consider it to be contaminated. You got to be kidding me. I said, you know, it felt like, I thought, now I know what people felt like when they weren't allowed to sit at the lunch counter down in Montgomery, Alabama. Now I know, you know. It's like, and when I was so mad when I come out of there. And I went straight to the Red Cross. I went right to the Red Cross. I said, you know what they told me in the Goodyear Labor Relations Department? And their answer to that was, that is not true at all. We want your blood. I said, well, would you mind seeing if you can do something about that? And of course they said, sure, but they never did. And they never did anything about it. But talk about a slap in the face, you know. So what I'm telling you is, there were things going on in there that needed to be addressed. We had tire builders washing their arms in I can't remember what the name of the chemical they used to wash it. You know, rubber workers, when you built tires and stuff, you would get a rubber residue on you. Really hard to get off. I mean, soap wouldn't take it off. And they had a chemical that they used to swab tires. So when these guys were done with their shift, they'd take that swab, dip it in that chemical, and they would wash their arms and hands. And then they found out later on it caused leukemia. Oh yeah. I remember what chemical it was now, but they had, I don't know how many cases of former rubber workers that died of leukemia, and I know that's where it came from. Mm-hmm. You know, so it took the union safety committee, to put a stop to that type of practice. Now, in today's world, I think industrial hygiene would put a stop to it, but back then it took complaints by the union in order to get that. Okay, we need something here that these guys can wash up in that's not going to kill them. You know, we worked in asbestos areas. When rubber came off of a mill, they would mix rubber in a banbury, and it would come out of the banbury and would go on a mill, and it would come around this mill, and these guys would cut slabs of it off the mill, and then they would put it on a little pallet, on a big pallet actually, but they would throw cans of soapstone in between layers so it didn't stick together. See, that soapstone was like a powder. Well, then they found out that soapstone, when you breathed soapstone, it was full of asbestos. So those guys that worked in those areas for years, they were breathing asbestos dust. They didn't know. All they knew, it was a powder to keep the rubber from sticking together. You know? So yeah, there was. I mean, hey, there was things that went on that there's no doubt in my mind, if we hadn't had a union, that attention would have never been drawn to it and nothing would have ever been done about it. The other side of the coin is that sometimes the union went way too far in insignificant, stupid things that really didn't matter, you know. And that's where you get the black eye, you know, when you're...
But would you say that was more like just individual agendas?
Yeah, probably. You know, yeah, absolutely. By far, James, honestly, when I think back, 90% of the union workers were never a problem. They came in, they did their job, they went home to their families. They were never a problem. But the 10% that was a problem, they were a big problem. They really were. And to me, in the end, when I finally quit, decided I'm not going to be involved in this no more, I kind of realized that the 10%, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I mean, that's where my union money is going to. Now, I had no choice about that. I had to keep, my dues came out because I worked there. But I decided, you know what, I may have to belong to this, and I may have to pay union dues to this, but I don't have to support this. And I just kind of quit doing it, But 90% of the guys were good people. Good family people, hard workers, came to work every day, and they got a black eye because of the 10% who weren't. And I don't know what you do about that, but many people tried to do something about it, and believe me, it must have hit your head against the wall. So, yeah, it was not good. So, usually one of two things: either addiction problems or just laziness. I want to work. You're getting paid. That was always my answer. Hey, you don't want to work, but you love getting paid. So, it has to be some give and take there,
Well, what do you think are the most important lessons about the tire industry in Akron? What do you think is kind of like the legacy that it left?
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind. Work ethic. That's that. I to this day carry that. I put that into my kids. You're not gonna ever accomplish anything if you don't work for it. And that working in there proved that to me. You have to be willing to work, whether it be to go to school and study, or work. And just like me, I got my first house because I worked overtime hours and I saved my money. I didn't spend it on things that many other people were spending it on. We saved it. My wife and I saved it. And we ended up having 4 or 5 houses and decent cars, and my kids went to college. And it all came down to what my dad told me: you have to be willing to work. If you're willing to work, people will like you. They will. If you're cooperative and you're willing to work, then you'll be rewarded for that somewhere along the line. And my reward was, most of the time, was just money. I had some opportunities, I told you that, and I said no to them. So I don't put that on Goodyear. That was on me, But I was rewarded in a lot of other ways. But without question, I think I learned a work ethic by working in there that, well, I always have. And I think my kids have now, too. I'm pretty sure they do. And boy, I try like heck to put that into my students down there. And some take it and some reject it. I'm thinking, man, you're making a big mistake. But I think that was the lesson learned right there. If you have to have a work ethic. You have to be responsible. Goodyear's not going to call you every morning and wake you up and make you get out of bed. They're not going to make you come to work. You have to be willing to do that on your own. I learned that when I was 18 years old. If I was late, I had 6 or 7 50-year-old men berating me. Where have you been? Get your butt out of bed and get to work in the morning. I don't care. We don't care whether you stayed up all night, doing whatever you do. You get your butt to work tomorrow morning on time. And after a couple times, you listen, and that's what you do. So yeah, and another thing I learned by working in there, I think, was that you just take one day at a time. If it seems hard, you break it down into one day at a time. It's not near as hard as you think it is. If you think, oh man, I'm going to have to work 7 days a week for the next 10 years or whatever, it's overwhelming. Your mind can't take that. But if you just put it in terms of, what am I going to work today? What am I going to work tomorrow? Then, everything comes out pretty good, man. I mean, it's good, you know. So, yeah, there was a lot of lessons, but mostly that I think I did learn a good work ethic. I really do, and honesty. You have to learn to be honest. I mean, I learned that on the job too, you know. So you be honest. You have a good work ethic, and if you're responsible, then you know you'll get opportunities. You'll get them. And at least we did. Maybe not so much anymore. You know, I don't know. But I hate what happened to Akron. And Canton's even worse. It's even worse than Akron. It really is. But I hate what happened to it. People were so happy. They would go to movies, go out to dinner. Everywhere you looked, there was these little ethnic restaurants where my wife was Hungarian, her family was Hungarian, you know, and I used to take her up to East Akron, and there was Hungarian restaurants up there. Oh man, they loved that, you know. That was like Grandma used to make, you know. But it's all kind of died away, you know, because there's nobody left. So I miss that, I really do. But my hope is that maybe my kids or my grandchildren now actually will kind of see the area bounce back or something. I doubt it. I doubt it. We'll see.
So you think that ideal of family left the city when it left Goodyear?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. In particular, you know what I think was one of the biggest benefits that I ever got out of Goodyear? When my kids were young, my wife didn't work. She worked until she got pregnant with our oldest son. And then she quit working until our youngest was 12 years old. And then she went back to work not because she had to, but because she wanted to, you know. So she had, you know, the formative years with those kids. They had a mom. You know, we didn't have to put them in daycare. We didn't have to get babysitters to come in. We didn't leave them alone. You know, they had a mother, you know, and boy, looking back, what an advantage when it comes to raising children. Of course, Dad wasn't there. Dad was working at the Goodyear all the time. My kids still say that. Dad, where were you? I was at work, man. You know, but I make up for it with my grandkids now. I do. It's not an accident. I do that on purpose. You know, I really do. But yeah, that was. I think even more than the money, that was great. That was great having a wife at home, you know, with the kids. That doesn't happen much anymore, you know. It doesn't. And you know, because I made enough money that we anybody can always use more money, but we lived a modest life. We had modest houses, you know. We didn't have anything extravagant. Instead of driving Cadillacs, I drove Chevys, you know. So that was the trade, you know. I made enough money that we could support a good, honest, moderate lifestyle with just me working and her staying at home. And it was great. Of course, then she, you know, got to be a woman of the millennium, and I'm going back to work. So, I said, yeah, go ahead, have fun. But yeah. And you know what? I really believe that my wife and I have been married for 43 years.
Wow.
43 years. 42 years. Be 43 this year. Should be mad. She heard me say that. Yeah, I know in my heart that had a lot to. The fact that I did make a decent living, and that she could be home with the kids, and we didn't have the pressures and the anxiety of having kids that caused a problem, you know, because they were supervised, you know. I really kind of believe that got us through the tough years of marriage. There is a period in a marriage where it's hard. You know, there's money problems, there's kid problems, there's housing problems. You know, we didn't have that. You know, and the reason we didn't have it was Goodyear. That's the reason we didn't have that stuff. And then, of course, after the kids are grown and gone, and the housing thing isn't a big issue anymore, now it's all fun and games again. You know, so but you got to get through that. You know, you really do. And having a job that I could make enough money to provide those things meant a lot, you know. It did. It meant a lot. So, should have made more. No, you know, my kids, like when it was time for go to college, I had enough money that I could help them. I did not have enough money that I could pay for it. So I told them both. I said, you know, if you're willing to work and you're driven to get an education, Mom and I will do what we can do. But there's a limit. You know, I can't do it all. So they both worked, and they both had student loans, and they're paid for now. I mean, they paid them off, and they're doing great, you know. So it worked out. But I don't know, you know, I guess if I'd have had more, they wouldn't have had to take out those student loans. But I mean, you know, there comes a time. It's amazing that, I mean, you work to make money, but there does come a time in your life when you sit down one day and say, you know what, I got to decide what's enough. You know, do I want to keep working 60 hours a week? And when I retired, that's kind of when I made that decision. I said, you know what, I'm making really good money, and I was, you know, but it's not worth it to me anymore. I want to see my grandkids. I want to go golfing. I want to work out in the yard a little bit, and you know, I don't regret it at all, man. But again, see, I spent 37 years in a job where I could get a pension, and I don't have to worry about starving, you know. Hope that stays.
I guess last question would be, do you think that Akron will rebound? I mean, maybe not with manufacturing, but in other ways.
You know what? I always wear the rose-colored glasses, and I want to say yes, but I just don't understand how. I mean, when our biggest employers are hospitals, what happens when us baby boomers are all gone? Do they still need Akron Summa? Do they still need Akron General, the biggest employers that we have? So I think that really helps, like, right now, but the truth is that that's not going to stay, you know. I think Akron U is a huge cog in that. I think if Akron U can continue to provide help with technology and like they do now with the polymer industry and stuff, I think that would be a big help to the city. I really do. But you're gonna have to have some type of magnet to draw businesses here, you know. And I don't know. Those days are gone. They're not coming back. The hourly production jobs and that's just not going to happen. But we do have some smart people here. We really do, you know, and I think when it comes to technology, this is, in my opinion, the other places that I've been, we probably have more people here who are capable of working in a technology field than most other places that I've been to. And I think we still have a little bit of that work ethic left in us. You know, I do. So between that, you know, maybe if you could take the university and take advantage of people's intelligence and their drive to work in a technology-driven field, and if you could show companies that we have the facility to train them, we have the people who are receptive to that training, maybe those companies would come in here. You know, maybe they would. And I do see them coming in. It's not enough yet. You know, not enough. But, yeah, that's why I like what I'm doing. Because I kind of feel like that I'm contributing to that. You know, a little bit. Not so much all the time, but a little bit. I guess that's my answer. You know, if we can convince people that we have a university that is diverse and we can train people in technology fields, and we have the people who are interested in the technology fields, they'll come. Build it, they'll come. You know, so you know, you ever been in much around the rest of the country? You know, out west or in the south or
a little bit, not too much.
They don't have the drive that Midwesterners have. I think that's our main attribute, is that we have a drive to have the American dream again, you know. I mean, the white picket fence and the nuclear family, and I think we it's still there. People get discouraged, and sometimes they throw up their hands and say it's never going to happen. But I do think the drive is there to do that. So, I working down here at Stark State, I can see the technology need. It's there. It's there. I got some great young people down there that are smart and driven. And I hope they make it without moving. So, yeah. And they're fighting things that I never had to fight. I never had to worry about how I was going to feed myself or where I was going to live. These guys are going to school and they don't even know where they're going to live or how they're going to feed their kids. And man, you talk about pressure. Wow. I try to keep that in mind. I do. I try to judge each semester and each person individually, if I can, because you may be going through things that I'm not, or that he is not, or so it can be harder on you than on him, and you want everything to be fair, but truth is, can't always be fair. I just let a girl yesterday make up an exam and 2 quizzes that she had missed because she was going through some bad family stuff, and I don't normally do that. My policy normally is that if you miss that stuff, sorry. Yeah. But I guess I'm getting soft or whatever, but sometimes you have to, you have to. It's like I told her, she thanked me for it yesterday, and I told her, I said, look, here's what I saw in you. You didn't give up. You got hit right smack in the face with some stuff that other people haven't been hit with and maybe not be able to handle, and you're handling it like an adult. And, that's admirable. So, when you do things that deserve a pat on the back, just like me, you should get them. I had 50-year-old men pounding me on the back. And I let her make up an exam. So, whatever. You learn. That's something else I learned at Goodyear too. See, everybody, this is another big thing that I learned there. Everyone needs a pat on the back. Everybody. I don't care who you are. It always feels good to have someone acknowledge that you've done something good, or that you've been a good person, or that you're reliable or honest, or whatever the situation may be. Everybody needs that. That's how I try to operate. And I do that with my grandkids. I do that with my kids. If you've got a pat on the back coming, you're going to get it from Grandpa. So, and they like that. They do. They light up when I tell them that. So, I learned that there too. Because, so many young people I think today say, I won't care what that old man thinks. But I did care what those old men thought, And they may say that, they care what I think. They do. I know they do. They may tell you that they don't care, but they do. So, whether they want it or not, they'll get it from me. I'll give it to them. And at the same time, if I feel like that they need a little kick, I give them a little kick. Verbally, or not physically, of course. That's not appropriate anymore. But I'll give them. I'll take them out. Go out, sit in the lounge, and say, hey, I'll talk to you for a few minutes here. You need for a readjustment here. That's what I tell them. You need to get yourself back on track. They just look at you like, and this how. Because I've been there, man. I've been there. So, I kind of got a little reputation. I'm kind of old school. I don't like it when they're late. I like it even less when they don't show up. So, but there is reasons. Things happen. So, learned all that right in there, right in the Goodyear. That's another thing. You ever hear the rubber companies referred to as the Goodyear? You ever hear that? Most of the guys that worked in there, it was never, where do you work? I work at Goodyear. No. I work at the Goodyear. That's what they. It's like it lived. It was like it was a living thing, you know. Where do you work? The Goodyear, the Goodrich. You know, that's what the old guy. My father-in-law worked at Goodrich for 40 some years, and that's what he always said. The Goodrich. Where you been? Oh, I've been at the Goodrich. So, yeah, it was like it was a living thing, you know. Kind of weird, but I don't know. Wow, 40 years and let's see, 1970. So it's been 44 years. Oh, jeez. Whew. Yeah, a long time. I'm glad you guys are doing this, though. I mean, that's you know, maybe someday. You do any writing? You write a book, or you write books, or anything like that? Maybe.
We'll see.
Yeah. You're doing a good job at the interview, and yeah, you're really. It's. Am I the only one you had to interview?
Yep.
Oh, you drew the short straw, man. So.
No, this was awesome. So.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Well, you do a great job. You know, you asked nice questions, and you let me ramble on to ask for more. So, yeah. But like I said, James, I had kind of buried that all in the back. I mean, and until I talked to you guys, and I got to thinking about that, I thought, you know what, that stinking place really had a lot of influence on me in ways that I hadn't really thought about in a long time, you know. But yeah, there was a lot of lessons in there. Learn a lot about people. You know, you really do.
Mm-hmm.
And I have this uncanny knack, well, according to my family, of being able to meet someone and know immediately, is this an honest person? Is this a sincere person? I do. And I think they're right. I actually feel like I do. And I learned that in there. You know, I really did. When someone's BSing me, I know immediately. I'm like, okay. But yeah, you do. You learn that. Some of it's probably just getting older too. It's too. By the time you learn that, then you die. So, well, it's been fun actually. I don't mind doing this at all.
Actually, I'm sure we're going to be sending you some more stuff and giving you copies of everything.
Yeah. Do you ever have have you had Mr. Eichler for any classes?
I'm not. He came in the one day, but no, I haven't had it.
Yeah, he's a great guy. See, he was a Goodyear electrician. He went through the apprentice school. He went through everything that I went through. Yep. But he made a choice to pursue his passion, years ago. And boy, I tell you what, he just seems like he's happy as heck doing it. And he's probably really good at it. He's a great guy. Yeah, it's like Jim. He was good at what he did there at Goodyear too. So, very likable person. Well, I hope I helped you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That was really interesting.
Well,
very, very.
I doubt it.
No, it absolutely was. I mean, this is huge just for what we're doing. I mean, you don't really. You look around and we read the books and it's a writer's perspective of what it was like, but you don't hear the people who are there because there's not a whole lot of them.
It's funny when you guys were passing that book around, when I was looking at that.